Hello and welcome. The Indian pharmaceutical market or the healthcare market holds tons of opportunity ahead, but it's not been an easy year for many companies, particularly the multinational companies who've seen growth slowing. There are many reasons for this. Let's try and understand some of them from Dr. Hasit Joshipura, Managing Director, India of GlaxoSmithKline Pharmaceuticals, and also try and get a sense of what lies ahead. Mr. Joshipura, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
So, the price control regime, I mean, this was quite dramatic, right? The number of drugs went up to 348 from 74, 5 times. This is also creating pressure on the wholesale and the retailer front, and they have been pushing back at the industry as a whole. Where is this all heading?
No, I'm not very clear. What do you mean by where is it all heading?
As in, do you feel that this is going to create more problems in terms of selling drugs, or is it a short-term adjustment problem?
Well, I mean, the industry is always it's a fragmented industry. And to that extent, and it's industry with different sort of stakeholders. And whenever there is a major change like this, there will always be a period of adjustment before things settle down.
Right. And do you feel that this adjustment could be, could it affect margins of pharmaceutical companies more? I mean, someone has to give along the chain.
No, I mean, the fact that we have a price control where prices of at least of some of the leading products have been corrected, if you will, then I mean, that's obviously going to have an impact on the profitability of the company.
Right. And that's affecting the whole industry, right? Okay, so let me...
In different degrees.
Yeah.
In different degrees.
Yeah. So let me ask you about GSK in specific. So how many of your products come under price control today, in general?
You see, for us, about 30% of our portfolio comes under price control.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's
And can we talk about the 70%? Would that include non-pharmaceutical products as well?
We don't have non-pharmaceutical products.
Okay, so that's a different company.
Yeah, that's a different company.
So what about the 70%? What are the areas where, what are the main brands?
No, the products which are not part of the national list of essential medicines will obviously not be under price control. So,
right. And how do you see that growing? I mean, this has been a tough year for the pharmaceutical industry as well.
No, I think growth has, of course, as I said in the discussion earlier, there are multiple drivers of growth.
Right.
So at one level, the underlying volume growth for the industry, those drivers are intact, and those are really driven by two parameters. One is the fact that India has a relatively underpenetrated healthcare sector. And second is the economics. So as the economy grows, more and more people come into the fold of modern medicine. So those drivers remain untouched. Then overlaid on top of that, you got the value component. That value component, of course, has been impacted because you have a price control, and it will remain impacted to the extent that you can now take up prices of those products only to the extent of increase in the wholesale price index.
Right.
So that will have an impact. There's no doubt about it. But that has to be, traded off with the volume increase that you might get because the prices have come down, but that volume increase is not going to drive industry growth. That volume increase will really be a market share game because some products are certainly cheaper and the premiums have come down. So to that extent, you would expect some shift in terms of market shares.
Right.
That's not going to impact the industry as a whole.
So why is the industry overall slowing down then?
No, the industry is overall, so one, of course, the large chunk of the value which has gone out because of product coming under price control.
Correct.
So that's taken the value out.
Right.
The second component is, I think, the fact that at least in some states there are free medications being given. So that will take some component out of the growth. So I think it's a combination of these factors.
Right. So I was looking at the numbers. The number of new products that have been introduced has also come down. Not sharply, but it's come down from 1,900 in 2010 to 1,700 in 2012.
That's been coming down for the last 5 years.
For the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And why is that happening, and can that reverse?
Yeah, see, because the new products as defined here are really not new innovative products in that sense. These are any new brands which are launched.
Okay.
Now, in any case, with the change in the patent regime, that puts a limitation on to the new products that you can launch, new innovative products.
Right.
So to that extent, you'll see new brands. And then the new brands, the number of new brands will keep coming down, obviously, because the industry as it is very competitive.
Right. So let me ask you about the two segments, chronic and acute therapies. Now, between the two, where do you see things either growing or not growing for yourself, and what are the opportunities that you like?
See, we've always felt that growth in India will come at all ends. It'll come at the acute end because as healthcare infrastructure improves and as more and more people have access to modern medicine, and as the trickle-down effect of economic growth sort of reaches down, you will continue to see growth at the acute end. And at the chronic end, as people become more affluent, you have, and people live longer, you have more chronic ailments, more westernized diseases. So that's the chronic end which will grow. So I think you will see growth at all ends of the industry. That's what we've always felt.
Right. So, for instance, I was talking to a health insurance practitioner, and he was saying that they feel that even the price of products, particularly supplied to hospitals, was higher than what it could be from the pharmaceutical manufacturers. So, I'm getting a sense that you are feeling or facing pressure points at various at various kind of stages or at various points. Is that how you see it as well, and or do you feel
it's a very competitive industry? I mean, and apart from being fragmented, so. For each product, and it's unlike any other pharmaceutical market in the world, for each product you have anything between 10 to 100 brands competing for the same indication. So that's a given, and which is why over the last 5 or 6 years you saw really very little growth at the value end of the industry. There was not much price inflation. And the reason is this, that it's a very competitive industry, and that's what you're seeing, and that's really what you're referring to.
Right. Now, when it comes to new products again, I mean, for instance, some time ago, GSK talked about a new malaria vaccine that's coming and it's going into testing and things like that. What are the new things that consumers or patients in India can expect in terms of innovations?
Innovations, you will see, I mean, there'll be innovations of two kinds. I think one of the impacts of the patent law and the intellectual property regime having changed is that a lot of Indian innovation is getting impetus. The second is you are seeing impetus innovation of a different kind, which is appropriate to our kind of environment. So recently at the American Society of Clinical Oncology, the plenary session was by Tata Memorial doctors, where they've come up with a low-cost acetic acid-based test for testing cervical cancer. So that's the second kind of innovation you will see. And the third kind of innovation is what you see in the West, which will come to India anyway now, because India is an important part of global healthcare.
And how do you see the current patent regime? I mean, is that something? I mean, I know that can be a very broad question, but how do you see it currently in terms of some of the rulings that have gone either not in favor of some other multinational companies? And
you see, GSK has always believed that intellectual property should be respected because it encourages innovation. Now, pricing is a very different issue, and the two should be separated. That's our position on it.
No, do you think that the patent regime, I mean, there's something can be done? This is a broad question again. So let's say there's a Novartis example of Levec and so on. Is that sending out signals to the global sort of multinational pharmaceutical community that India is still not ready to take in further innovation or innovation-led patents?
I'm not sure I would go to that extent. I think the reality is that we do have a patent law. The reality is that products are getting patented in India. Now, there could be some corrections as you go along, because these early days of the patent law in this country, and I'm sure that will happen as we go forward.
Right. And what's your take on clinical trials? I mean, that's another subject that's going to be discussed. India has only 2% share of global clinical trials. We have a long way to go, and yet there has been judicial as well as governmental interventions, maybe kind of constraining or curtailing what could have maybe become a big industry.
No, we believe that you must have adequate controls in place to make sure that patients are protected. You must have adequate regulatory provisions in place to make sure that patients are protected. But equally, I think clinical trials are important. They're important because that's the way innovation happens. You have to make sure that there is no exploitation of patients, and I don't think any global company would do anything like that. So all of us, we have the same standards for clinical trials in India as we have for any other jurisdiction in the world. So I don't think that's an issue, but clearly there must be adequate protection for patients. But equally, we must make sure that we create an environment where clinical trials can happen.
And what do you think needs to be done at this point of time? I mean, in order to alleviate the situation if...
No, we need clarity.
From the government.
Clarity from all sides.
Right. So, no, for instance, in clinical trials specifically, there is an issue of patient management, there's an issue of compensation, right? Is there a better way that these can be addressed?
No, I think both are legitimate, but we must make sure that they are rational and they're sensible. I mean, of course, now the matter is sub judice, so I don't want to go there at all, but clearly, I think where compensation is payable, we must lay down guidelines that compensation is payable, but equally, I think it cannot become blanket. So there must be a sensible approach to this, which will ensure that the interests of all the stakeholders are protected.
Right. So let me come back to a broader sort of question, which is looking ahead. How are things looking ahead for the rest of the year?
Well, for us, the year end is December, so we got a couple of months to go. It's not been a good year for us because in the first half we had some supply constraints, so that impacted us. And then, of course, the introduction of the National List of Essential Medicines and price control has come in. And then we had challenges where a part of the trade was not buying. So I think hopefully some of this will get resolved as we go forward. And we should see a better 2014.
Right. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.